Hello everyone. Today we are going to learn how to perform basic system programming in Inform Voice. In order to configure Inform Voice, we need to use an application called IFV Administrator, which we install on a Windows desktop or server computer, which has network access to the Inform Voice server built on the Ubuntu operating system. Let's run the Inform Voice Administrator, which I have installed in this computer. We will be asked for the server credentials. Those are the Inform Voice server credentials. And if you take a look at this Remember Me checkbox, if I keep this checkbox checked, I won't be asked for those credentials anymore. I just click OK. Let's take a look at the different menus and tabs we have. We have a main menu on the top with 4 items, a file menu that has a refresh option to refresh information, has an import and export option. Um, we have a view menu that enables or disables different panes in the system. We have a tools menu with different tools we can run. We have a MEF help menu with an online help and an about dialog box that shows us the version of the system we are running. We have several tabs which we will fill with information pertaining to the system depending on the device we are going to assign. We are going to use a specific tab. We can see on the general tab a system item. If we open up the plus sign, we will see a list of sub-items to assign. So if you look at all that, it looks a little bit intimidating at the beginning, but actually it is not. What we're going to do is we are going to concentrate in the specific element we are going to assign and the properties required for that specific elements, and we will end up assigning the whole system in no time. Before we attempt to assign stations and addresses and users into the system, we need to take care of basic system programming items. Why? Because we will be asked to provide those basic system programming items when we define the stations and the numbers and the users. We will start with the zone. The basic purpose of the zone is to isolate groups of devices between each other. The idea is that if we assign a device in one zone and a device in a different zone, those devices cannot communicate with each other. Now, if you wonder why would we do that in an environment which belongs to a single company where we actually want everybody to be able to communicate with one another. There is still a case of building different zones in that environment. And I will show you why. Let's start with this default zone. I'm going to rename this default zone, and I will rename it with the name Chicago, with this our first office. This caller ID can be used as an outbound caller ID for devices that belong to this particular zone. So I will use a number particular to this Chicago um, office that I can eventually use as an outbound caller ID for the devices of that zone. There is another item I can select per zone, which is music on hold. So devices on different zones can have different musics on holds. Okay, let's create another zone for Orlando. And let's assign a caller ID specific to the Orlando zone, just as an example. And let's create a zone for Las Vegas, but here if I click on the zone and I click on the plus sign, I will add a particular element of that type. So there are different ways to create items here. I will create the zone Las Vegas. I will add an outbound caller ID for Las Vegas. Now, at this point, the zones are isolated with each other, but I don't want that. So what I want to do is I will create a trust relationship in the zones. So I will double click on the Chicago area and I will go to a tab called Trusted Zones and I will add the other zones so I can trust Las Vegas and Orlando against Chicago. Let's take a look at the Las Vegas zone and I will look at the trusted zone and here, as I already assigned a trusted pair, Chicago is trusted with Las Vegas, but Las Vegas is not trusted with Orlando, so I can add Orlando here. And this way, if I click on Orlando, if I look at the trusted zone, Orlando trusts Chicago and Las Vegas. So this trust relationship allows us to be able to communicate the devices in different zones and still have different zones because of other applications that are unique to zones. For example, this outbound caller ID or the music on hold I'll show you. The next item I want to talk about is the local area network. As you can see, there is a default local area network. The concept of a local area network is as follows. On voice over IP systems, voice is digitized, it's converted to bits and bytes. So if and the way the voice is digitized is using different codecs, different ways to convert those voices to digital. And those codecs can use different bandwidths, higher bandwidths or lower bandwidths. Higher bandwidths means more resolution, but more bandwidth consumption, and lower bandwidths are allowed to be transmitted in links like WAN links that has a lower bandwidth in itself. But the quality is less because the voice is compressed. So the basic way that Inform Voice handles this is as follows. If I have two devices that are assigned to the same local area network, the system will use a codec list with codecs that use more resolution but higher bandwidth. If the devices are located in different local area networks, the system will try to use a codec list that has more priority on codecs that use compressed voice and save bandwidth. So that would be the ideal condition in an environment like ours because it has 3 cities and we probably have one connections between those offices, and the one connection will have limited bandwidth. Mm. So I can take this default LAN and rename it to the Chicago office. So this will be the LAN assigned to Chicago. And then I can create a local area network for Orlando and a local area network for Las Vegas. As you can see, there are other properties that belong to the LAN, but we will talk about those properties in the specific video that talks about those features in particular. Are not interested in them right now. Now, let's talk about the codecs now. Where do we see those lists I mentioned earlier? We'll look at the top. We can double click or we can right click and see this item view properties. And you will see a lot of tabs, and the tab we are interested in is the one called media streams here. And here you have one tab that says LAN preferred and one that says WAN preferred. The codec list one, LAN preferred, uses high definition codecs first. The codec list that says WAN preferred uses G729, which is a compressed voice codec. We cannot change those lists, but we can change the codecs in those lists and the order. We can lower it, raise, etc. Now, if we are not happy with this, we can create a codec override list, and we can apply it to the device, and the device will use that list instead of the LAN or WAN preferred list. For example, I created earlier a only G729 list with G729 as the single codec plus the telephone event, which is the codec used for DTMF transmission. So don't forget that when you create a new codec list. And then I can apply this list to any device. And when we talk about devices, we will see the place in which we can override the standard functionality. Let's talk about localization settings. If we open up the item localization, you will see one item which was created during install. And that item basically deals with language. As you can see, the language defined for this particular localization setting is English. So if I create a new one and I select, for example, the acronym for Spanish, and I will select the country as Spain, and I select the language as Spanish for Spain. If I create a device and I tell that device that the localization instead of being US is Spain, then the system will reconfigure the device, for example, a terminal, to display all its messages in the proper language, Spanish. The setting also has to do with voice services, and that will be explained in a subsequent video as well. Let's define telephony areas. We will find the item here, we will open it up, and you will see a default telephony area, which was created during first-time commissioning. Let's review it to see the purpose of the telephony area, which is to locate a specific device, either station or trunk, within the country's numbering plan. It's based on templates which are pre-assigned in the system. Uh, some countries have more than one, so we have to be careful. And this first telephony area was created based on the Office of Chicago. So I will rename this telephony area Chicago. As you can see, it has a area code for Chicago. And the PBX number or office number for the Chicago office. You will see there are number ranges that define different types of numbers. And we have a rules tab that controls how the numbers are going to be manipulated based on the area code, office code, and being international numbers or long distance numbers. Everything is already preset. We don't need to worry much about that. So let's define the Orlando telephony area. We will select a 10-digit local dialing template here. We will add an area code and an office number for the office in Orlando. Now with 10-digit local dialing, we need to tell the system which are the area codes that are considered local numbers. So the prefix 1 is not added to the system. So I do that, I say OK. Now I have a warning here that tells me that I didn't assign a specific field. So I don't worry about that. In this instance, we will talk about that in a different video when we assign trunks to the system. And then finish with Las Vegas so you can see how it's built. Las Vegas has 7 digits local dialing. I will use 7 and 2 as area code. It's an outside number for the Las Vegas office. And then I will click OK, and it warns me that I didn't assign a specific index, and that's enough. Finally, let's talk briefly about classes of service. The system defined a couple of classes of service as a default. Let's take a look at the default profile to see what are we able to assign. So classes of service enables or disables certain features, as you can see here on top. Controls how many simultaneous calls a specific station or user, because we have two different types of class of service, will receive from 1 call up to 48. And also controls what we normally call toll restriction. So restriction based on digit sequences. It's a little bit more than that because we can also define station-to-station restrictions in the same environment. But mainly it's used for toll restriction. So what you should do with a customer is sit down and define all the different classes of services that you will need based on the customer's environment. So in my example, I imagine 3 classes of service, one for managers, another one for employees. Let's say an employee can be toll restricted for certain destinations and the manager would not. And maybe another one for other, let's say, terminals located in public places within the company. When we want those devices to be further restricted than the manager employee ones. So we assign zones, we assign telephony areas, we assign localization settings, we assign local area networks and classes of service. So now we are ready to configure stations, addresses, and uses. But this will be subject of a different video. So I thank you and see you in the next one.